Hi everyone, my name is Nicera, and due to time, I'm just going to share my slide right away. But I'm Nicera. I live in a big city, and it's a big city with many informal settlements. As you can see in my first slide, that's me, and that is where I live. And we have very many informal settlements. And as I speak, I'll ask you a question about what you see in this photo, the second photo. And as we go on, I'll be asking you a question of what you see in this diagram. What is speaker was speaking, and when I finish speaking, you now differentiate between community mapping and when we talk about technology and community mapping. So, okay, understanding community mapping. For us as community mappers, we want community to be able to interpret their own issues, and they can do that on a piece of paper and a pen, as you can see this diagram. And it is, yes, difficult, and it can, yes, be very, it may be difficult or not. It depends actually, because as you can see, they are mapping hotspot. They're mapping hotspot in their areas. But now taking this map to the next level, we need some expertise on that. Now they have completed mapping, and now they are explaining these points. They are explaining these points, what happens in each and every area. And they were mapping the GBV hotspot in the area. But now, as I say, this map needs to be taken to the next level. The work doesn't finish here. And the question I'll be asking more and more is data becoming the new currency? Is community mapping becoming the new currency? Is the answer yes or no? Then now, community mapping focus. What should we focus when it comes to community mapping? I get pissed off, and I'm sorry to say this, when organizations come to the ground and they want to map out things that even they don't matter to us at all. Me as a community person, I'm like, now, I know you have money, but wait a minute. This is becoming problematic, because when you map out things that are not like, they don't relate to us, and even when you map, you just go away and you never return the data to us. I'm like, now, what is it that you're doing? Okay, our first agenda is about poor infrastructure. I think it's the main, it is a cross-cutting issue in other countries, apart from the first world countries. Maybe you agree on me on that. Then you have the forced evictions. How do you map these forced evictions? You know, even now, actually, as I speak, we are having like a 28-kilometer road in Kibera. So this means that a lot of peoples will be evicted from their areas. And remember, we don't have a RAP. A RAP is a relocation action plan, whereby when you evict people, it is the RAP says that when you want to evict people, you must relocate them to a safer place. But now that doesn't happen at all. Then the poverty penalty from the government. What do I mean with the poverty penalty? Okay, me as a person, I have to like pay for basic needs much higher than a person who is living in a very posh area. For instance, I have to pay for water like 3 times higher. I have to pay for a toilet, I have to pay for a bathroom, so such kind of things. You're being penalized by the government because you are being poor. Then the pandemic, how to map pandemic, and it is not just about the COVID-19. Remember, in the informal settlement, you have a lot of pandemics, like the floods. We have disasters like cholera, which happens, and then climate change. Most of the time is when people think that climate change is a cutting down of trees, but now when it comes to like informal settlement is very different to us, because climate change to me is now the relocation, the rural urban migration. The rural urban migration now, it's now becoming so rampant in that we are having now the slum above the slums. I mean, with the poor structure, as poor it is very poorly built, there's another structure on top of me. And remember, there's no like toilets, you don't have like those basic necessities. So this one become even like, it becomes, I don't know how to explain this. Becomes now, in fact, it's evil. Let me say that it's just evil, because now very poor structure, and there's another structure on top of the slum above a slum. And now we are having a lot of climate change issues. We've had stories whereby women are having miscarriage because of industrial emissions in the informal settlements, because most of the industries are in the informal settlement, of which is not good at all. We have issues of children again being affected by climate change. So these are things that we should map. We should map out when it comes to now community mapping. Then we have the GBV. GBV is something that is it's all over the world. Academias, researchers, you should come up with tools that we can be able to map out GBV in all aspects. Then I spoke about eviction. This eviction happened during the COVID time. Remember, we had a lot of restrictions, the government sensation, the curfews, but now they went ahead to evict people, as you can see in this diagram, and thousands of people were evicted. Then it was not just in Nairobi, by the way, even in Nigeria, there were evictions, and these were deadly and brutal during the COVID time. And they happened at the village of Ikenja. The infrastructure, poor infrastructure, pathetic. This is pathetic. And if you look well, in the second photo, you can see some structure, and these are people living there. They are human beings, actually, who are living in these houses. And now it hasn't rained, remember, it hasn't rained well. It was just a small rain, and you can see now how the situation is. So imagine a scenario where now there's a lot of rains. So these people will now like sleep standing, or maybe they have to move they'll have to move to higher grounds. So in the informal settlement, we have two sides of the story. Okay, we have the things that are facing us as people living in the informal settlement. As you can see here, this was a demonstration. I was part of this demonstration. On the other side, you have women who are trying to make ends meet, very active women, and yeah, they are doing what they can to pay their rent, to feed for their children, and so forth and so forth. Then mapping and pandemic. So what did we do as community mappers? We carried out 2 surveys, and that was the needs assessment survey and COVID impact on women and crime. When COVID came, a lot of issues were the government didn't like focus on a lot of issues, and this ranges from the crime, of which you say that crime is only for men. Crime is when you talk
Falamos sobre questões de crime. Nós estamos falando, às vezes pensamos sobre somente os homens, mas agora precisamos pensar
basically touching on women below 30 years, and how crime now is how they are getting into crime because they cannot feed for themselves. So because of COVID, there were a lot of issues that came up. One being crime, GBV, the rise of GBV cases, and these are just two, but there were so many things that came up. Even the radicalization, even the conflict, violence, and extremism in the informal settlements. And the methodology now, we have the documentation, documentation. What I mean with documentation is now the actual capturing of the household photos, taking videos. We had the random walk, the household questionnaires. Then we used the ODK and Kobo correct. Sorry, I'm going very fast because of time. And then we also worked with the Slum Dwellers International, and this was to track the situation of the COVID-19. Because yes, the government was giving us the results, but now we needed to see how are our communities faring. And as you can see, this was carried out in June 2020, and the reports of cases, the first point talks about the reports of cases isolated to two settlements in Nairobi, Kologocho and Mathare. There has been low prevalence of testing. There was low prevalence of testing in Nyarenda and in all the Nairobi informal settlement, because I remember a scenario whereby people were asking now, why are you testing us and we are hungry? Just give us food and then test us. So people were like very receptive when it came to being tested over COVID. Then there were the reports of deaths. There was the low number of isolation centers, of which it is still now, but the COVID is now, the numbers are decreasing, which is good. Then the community rapid response, because now I'm mapping, and this is where at times we go wrong. And I'm talking about organizations that are doing mapping, the researchers, the academias. We take the data to their community, because now they need to come up with solutions. They need to come up with some ideas of what should be done after giving them this data. And you can see this was in Mathare, whereby now the community were asking the government to work through community-led organization. Number two, they were asking the government to use the local youths as community health volunteers. The third point was they were asking the government, and I repeat, they were asking the government to give them continuous flowing water, because now we were being told, wash your hands with soap and water, but there was no water. But we can see now from these, we are having the NMS giving us free water in the informal settlement. And even other organizations now, they came up to give the community free water. Then condemn violent and corrupt models of enforcement. Evictions during COVID, during pandemics. I don't know if that will ever stop. Maybe if God comes. Then to work with residents and CBOs to locate safe isolation centers. The isolation centers, I think we were having very few isolation centers, and the numbers were escalating. This was in June. So this was after the data collection. This is what the community were demanding from the government. These were the possible isolation centers in the city community, and you can see all of them at schools. In fact, all of them are schools. So with when we have, and there's a danger in having an isolation center in a school, because imagine a scenario now whereby, in fact, right now the students are in school, and if we had scenarios whereby now this was to be implemented, and then the students come back to school, and now the COVID-19 would have affected a lot of students in the school. The Mombasa County as well, most of them are schools. And yeah, we have a few dispensaries. We have the Tononoka Social Hall. At least this one is a bit different. The COVID-19 impact on young girls. What happened? What happened when we had, now the schools were closed, yes. And movement, a sensation of movement. So we had girls being locked up with fathers, with brothers, with all those people, and the numbers of early pregnancies skyrocketed, just like that. We had a lot of cases of early pregnancies, and even as I talk, a lot of girls have not gone back to school because of COVID. And that's why I was saying, the COVID-19 brought a lot of things that government were overlooking, and it's until the situation went out of hand, that's when they started acting. The gender-based violence, I talk about this. Okay, I'm a survivor, but when it came to COVID and gender-based violence, the cases skyrocketed, and we had poor, and this was because we were rocking the vulnerable people. This is our women, young girls, with the perpetrators. And remember, I'm talking about a 10 by 10 house with like 3 to 5 members. And these people are not working because there were a lot of job losses. And now the gender-based violence was ranging from femicide. We had a lot of young girls, young men who were killed during that time. The cases were not reported, but we have captured that in our data. Again, we had a lot of rape cases. We had a lot of things that were happening around the gender-based violence. This was simply because perpetrators being locked down with vulnerable women and the vice versa. And when I talk about GBV, it is not just about women. Even the men are being violated, but they never say when that happens. The challenges of community mapping, and you'll agree with me, when it comes to community mapping, we have communication barriers. We have the literacy levels, because now we are talking about people who are in university. We have now the stakeholders. We have now the real community that you're supposed to involve in this data collection. The lack of funding, the language when it comes to interpretation of this data. And of course, we are facing that as well in community mappers. Because now, after collecting this data, taking it to the next level, now the language, how do you interpret that data? Because in fact, I was in the interior parts of Rikoni, and they're doing the same thing that you're doing, the community mapping, but now you find that the language and the literacy levels, the language and the communication barriers makes it a bit different when it comes to training those people, but we are working on that as well. Then I'd ask you a question, what is the role of researchers? What do you think that researchers and academians should do when it comes to community mapping? Because again, this is, to me, this is the new currency. Data is the new currency, and especially community mapping, because with data, you can be able to lobby for services from the government and the county government. Because for us, we have the two systems of government, the county government and the national government. With the data, you can be able to look for resources because you have the facts. You're not talking from the point of, we have a problem of infrastructure. We have a problem of unemployment. You have the data, so you can negotiate with that data. And when you have resources, that is money. So this is my final slide. And as I said, my name is Nicera. Nicera Wanjiru. I'm the founder, the community mappers. That's our website. Any question, I'm here. Thank you so much.